Welcome back to another edition of Traits Triumph by way of What's to Play Productions. I'm Christian, here with Brian. SportsFan, shout out to you. SportsFan was, of course, unable to make the last episode. For this episode and potentially the next couple, SportsFan may be in or out. We just want to make sure we're keeping him lifted up in prayer. SportsFan's good, but just sending prayers to to his family. But not too much on that. But SportsFan, we're thinking about you. Hope you enjoy this episode. We know that you don't always agree with our rankings, so we're gonna try to spice it up a little bit just for you, SportsFan, because I know you just love to hear me and Brian's interesting rankings. So today, me and Brian have for you the pass catchers, the wide receivers, and the tight ends of the 2025 NFL Draft. All right. So for the episode, we did the DBs a couple weeks ago where we ranked them together. We're gonna do the wide receivers and tight ends separately. Brian, you want to start off with the wide receivers or the tight ends?
We can start with the wide receivers.
All right. The draft divas, the lead tweeters, the Edgar Allan Poes of the NFL. So let's start off with our wide receiver ones. Are you doing this in tiers, or are we just doing it in the list format? How'd you have yours?
Oh, I did mine in tiers, but we could do it in the list format as well. So
No. Let's do the tiers. I like the tiers. It really activates my mind because I might. I don't know. All right, tier one.
All right, so
tier one wide receiver.
I think we both have only one person in our tier one.
Yes.
I think this is very dependent on how you view this prospect and how you see it. I don't know if Jalen would have had him on his receiver list, but for me and Christian, we both have Travis Hunter as our wide receiver one. I'm gonna let Chris give more detail on that because he's been a big proponent. He was a big proponent the last couple of months of why Travis should be wide receiver one. So I'll let him start with the analysis.
With Travis, I have been saying on Trace Triumph for the last, like Brian said, last couple months that I feel like Travis is a better receiver than he is a corner, and that is saying a lot because I feel like he's a very good cornerback prospect. But as a wide receiver, I feel like it's just more natural for him. At least at the college level, it looked like he was routing people up. SportsFan makes a comparison a lot whenever we talk about Travis to Odell Beckham. I like to compare his movement style to another LSU receiver, Justin Jefferson. Similar frames. He's not as big as Justin Jefferson, of course, but you get in the NFL weight room, you can put on a little bit of weight. But he moves very similar, especially once he gets the ball in his hands to Justin Jefferson. The way they move on the field just looks very similar to me, and that is when I first really started to appreciate the receiver prospect that Travis Hunter was. And so for me, I have him wide receiver one. I think he wins on the outside. He can win from the slot if he has to. Probably as a 4.3 speed guy. He didn't run the 40 because he didn't need to. But he's probably a 4.3 speed guy, so he can win over the top. Runs good routes. Don't pay too much attention to that pro day clip. A lot of people think he was trolling or he was just out there just doing stuff. And after the catch, he's dynamite. Only thing you're really concerned about with him as a receiver is probably his frame. But like I said, NFL weight rooms, you can put on 5 to 10 pounds. And that's really probably all he needs. Just don't put on too much to it where it doesn't slow him down and take away from what he is as a route runner. But as a wide receiver one, a true outside number one receiver, I don't see too many weaknesses in his game. Great at the catch point. And that's where I really, at the catch point, he really looks like a wide receiver. His ability to truly go up, get the ball. If he was a true natural cornerback, you would see a lot more drops. Yeah. I don't see drops from him on film. He's a natural receiver to me, and I feel like he can also say he's a natural DB. But I feel like where he will shine more and where he will make more of that money is that wide receiver if he pursues that full time. But I'm of the belief that he should play both to however much he can. But if he had to pick one, if it was about the money, I think he should pick receiver.
So I agree there, and a lot of the scouts seem to agree with your assessment because most teams seem to have him more as a receiver than a corner. Most people have mocked him. I know in the last episode I said that Abdul Carter seemed to be the favorite to go number 2, but it seems like now it has shifted to Travis Hunter becoming a Cleveland Brown. So most likely day one, I think he would be. I'm sure he'd be impactful. I think he has a chance to be the wide receiver one there if he does get drafted by Cleveland, but I think it may be dependent on. It may be a little scheme dependent, and it may be depending on how the court. Well, I would think that he would try to use him as the wide receiver one, but just figuring out what the quarterback situation is, figuring out if they want to still run that offense a little bit more through Judy or through Njoku. But like you said, Travis is a special talent. He's a guy that that you want to get the ball in his hands as much as possible. As you said, he's very good at the catch point, both offensively and defensively. And I think that's why he was so good defensively at anticipation. As I said in the DB episode, his knowledge on both sides of the ball is going to be the thing that helps him the most because he understands what DBs are looking for as a receiver, and he knows what receivers are looking to do as a corner. So either way, I think he'll be successful in the league, no matter what he decides to do. But it seems like a lot of people have. It seems like right now, if he were to get drafted today, his lead position would be wide receiver. So that would be the thing we would look for going forward to see what his snap splits would be. But I think he'll probably I'm sure he'll be a receiver for the most part.
Yeah, I don't really have much more on it. I just think wide receiver and DB is where he truly stands out as a prospect. Um, but if he is to simply go play receiver, I don't see him having any lack of success. There was a term that we were using in the last draft cycle with Marvin Harrison. I don't remember the exact term, but it was basically explaining that he wasn't QB dependent, where we felt like he would have success no matter who was throwing him the ball. And I said that about Marv, and in comparison to a lot of the other rookie receivers, he had one of the regular regular rookie year. And a lot of those other rookie receivers showed that they weren't QB dependent at all. Malik Neighbors had one of the worst QB situations in the league. No offense to you, Brian, but he still put up 1,000 yards. Brian Thomas had Trevor Lawrence for half the year, and then Mac Jones for the rest of the year. So he wasn't QB dependent at all. Who else? Who else? Even Roma Dunze, he
Yeah.
had a decent season once things really got going. And Caleb Williams, I don't want to make it seem like Caleb Williams was a bad quarterback, but he wasn't getting the target share that he wanted. But I think everybody could see when they were watching on film, when Roma Dunze was getting the ball and when he was actually getting his targets, he looked like he could be a serviceable wide receiver one, wide receiver two in the future. So I think Travis Hunter falls in those lines where as long as the quarterback is throwing on the ball, putting it in the catch radius, I think he'll go get it. He'll be able to win with routes, speed, and at the catch point. So I don't see any reason why he would not succeed as an NFL wide receiver. So we can move on to tier two, and we may have some differing here at the top of tier two because my wide receiver two and the first person in tier two for me is Matthew Golden. So Matthew Golden really that 4.29 really increases draft stock. Me and Sportsman was talking about Matthew Golden towards the end of the college football season, towards really the beginning of NFL draft talk. It was like, Matthew Golden, because I'm a Commanders fan. I was like, Matthew Golden at 29 feels like a possibility. Sports fans, a Cardinals fan, I think they're like 15 or 16. He was like,
16.
I don't know, Matthew Golden at 15 or 16, but he felt like that could have been a reach at the time. I feel like now, if that is the pick, I feel like that's probably great value for where he is being viewed at this point. I feel like a lot of the receivers in this class, at least the top three, their stock has risen in comparison to their peers. Matthew Golden 4.29. I don't think anybody saw that out of him just because it didn't really show up on tape. And somebody worded it good is that in the Texas offense, he wasn't asked to be the 4-2 guy because Matthew Golden was the guy who was winning with routes, was getting across the middle, making good plays on the ball at the catch point. Because he's only about 5'11", 6 foot.
Yeah.
But similar to Terry McLaurin, he's good in the contested catch scenario. Terry McLaurin is probably the best contested catch receiver in the league. So I don't want to give that comparison to him, but just comparing for size, Terry McLaurin is about 6 foot, 6'1", and he wins a lot contested catch scenarios. Matthew Golden does the same. He had the big touchdown at the end of the Texas game against Arizona State in that college football playoff. And so just to see him win at the catch point, win with routes, and you also find out that he has 4.29 speed, it feels like it's a whole nother layer of his game that was shown that necessarily wasn't displayed at Texas. But now that we know that he has that, there's a whole nother level of his game that he could take it to. Because I mentioned Terry McLaurin. Terry McLaurin was a 4.35, 4.34 guy. Matthew Golden 4.29. So it's like there's a certain level that he may be able to get to that a Tet McMillan, who would be my next receiver in the tier two, may not be able to get to just because of the explosiveness as of an athlete. Because I think a lot of the Tet McMillan comparisons, the Drake Londons, the Mike Evans, they're great at the catch point, pretty decent after the catch, but there's a certain limit just because of their athleticism. And I feel like Matthew Golden gives you the screen game, the deep game, running routes across the middle, comeback routes, curls, and then that sudden twitch after the catch that he can also give you. Just puts him just a hair above Ted McMillan for me. And if I was in need of an outside receiver or a slot receiver, I would probably take him before I take Ted McMillan.
So on my side, I do have Ted and Matt Golden both in tier two. I decided to go with Ted as my wide receiver two after a whole lot of consideration because I did have Matthew Golden as my wide receiver two for a very good minute. But I think just with Ted, it's 6'4", 219, 4'4", running a 4.48 at the pro day, I believe. He's a guy that has inside outside versatility, which was something that I liked with Golden, and that was one of the reasons I had him as my wide receiver too. But I think Ted's a guy that you can play either at the slot or outside. Good at contested catches as you said about Matthew as well. I think he has solid yard after the catch potential. He's not going to be the burner that Golden is, but he's a guy that can make that happen. I think both him and Golden were a little affected by their situations, especially at the quarterback position. Because I know with Ted, there was a lot of plays that you saw where he would either get overthrown, he would get underthrown, so he had to come back to the ball and wait, or he'd have to like try to make adjustments because the ball was behind him and things of that nature, even on like quick slants and plays like that. So I think giving him the chance, giving him a more accurate quarterback, maybe somebody like a Geno Smith, if Vegas takes him at 6, I think we'd be able to see his yard after catch potential a little bit more on display than it was last season. But that's why I slightly had him as my wide receiver too. With Golden, obviously, as you said, blazing speed, very good route runner, a guy that again could probably be an inside out guy. But I think for the most part he'll probably be put in the slot just because of his size, and depending on what team he goes to, that's a possibility as well. As you said about slot DBs and like in one of the previous episodes, if you're exclusively in the slot, that doesn't mean that you're a bad receiver or you're not capable of playing on the outside. It's just scheme and potentially how the way you're schemed up in the best ways to get you the ball. But he could also probably be a Z receiver as well if he's on the outside. So that's that. But yeah, so right now I'd have Tet as my 2 and Matthew is my 3, but I can understand why somebody would have Matthew as their 2. And Ted is their 3. But they're both in tier 2 for me, and I think that's the same for you. So yeah, that's
Yeah. I mean, like I said, I have Golden just a hair above Tet just because I feel like I value after the catch a lot, and I value the short game a lot as well. Where I feel like he's a little bit more explosive I want to say Chet than Tet McMillan. But like you were mentioning, that catch radius for Tet McMillan is out of this world, and so it goes even more into the QB dependent thing where if you put it anywhere near him, he can go make a play on it. And so he could probably go to a worse situation than Matthew Golden. And I'll say that if you put them with the same bad quarterback, I think Ted McMillan will probably have more success year one than Matthew Golden does, just based off being able to get the ball thrown in the vicinity and being able to make a play on it from there. But I feel like scheme dependent, however you view it, in the optimal situation for both of them, I feel like Matthew Golden may just have a higher ceiling down the line just because of the explosiveness. But 2 very good prospects, easy first round grades for the receivers. And for the first 3, these first 2 tiers, I would say, are the only like really first round locks. My first receiver in tier 3, I would definitely take in the first round, but I could see some people questioning first or second round just because of the production and where he would play. But these 3 receivers, first round locks for me. Honestly, they'll probably be top 15, top 20 players on my big board once I do it. And it's a lot. It's not much separating Tet and Matthew, so it's really based on what you prefer from receivers.
Yeah.
So we can get into a tier 3 if you want to. I want to hear your tier 3. uh the first receiver in your tier three first.
First receiver in my tier three. Um, so right now my tier, well, not I won't say right now because he's gonna be my receiver four, but right now I have Emeka Egbuka out of Ohio State
Hey,
as my receiver four.
me too.
Yeah, I just with
Really.
him as you just stated, I think he's a guy that's gonna be a first round guy. He'll probably be late first round, but he's a guy again. I think that he has inside. I keep saying this about receivers, but I think he has inside outside versatility. I think he's going to be a guy that most of his snaps, probably like 80% of his snaps, depending on what team he goes to, it's probably going to be slot based. Especially if he were to go somewhere like, but if he were to go somewhere like Pittsburgh, it probably becomes like 90, 95 because you already have Pickens and Metcalf on the outside. But from what I saw on tape, he's a good route runner. He's good. He's good after the catch. He's a guy that you can get in the. He's probably a guy that you want to get the ball in the intermediate game. He can also make plays in the short game, but I think mostly intermediate is probably more of his style. Yeah, he was productive at Ohio State, which is it's expected, but it's not always the thing that you everybody's not consistently productive. I guess I should say it
Right.
that way. Especially with obviously having Jeremiah Smith come in, you had to compete with like Garrett Wilson and Chris Olave and people like that while he was there. So um, constantly productive. So it's not. So there's no issue there. Good on film, good on tape, and yeah, it's just the guy that I think will be productive day one, and depending on what scheme he's in, I think that he'll thrive. So I would definitely like to see a team like Pittsburgh take him if they don't go quarterback, because I think that he would be the guy right away that could be in that slot position, and then you can have a guy that would allow a guy like Calvin Austin to kind of be your wide receiver four, and a guy that you can use in the slot in a pinch instead of having to use him as your primary slot receiver.
Yeah, for me, I had Emeka as the first receiver in tier three. He was really actually pretty close to being in tier two. As a former Emeka Egbuka hater, I'll admit that because I feel like, and it goes into the previous conversation we were having about preseason hype, and Emeka Egbuka was somebody who was getting preseason hype for the last 2 years. Every time an Ohio State receiver would get drafted, they would say Emeka Egbuka was the next one up.
Yeah,
And then Marvin Harrison happened, so Emeka Egbuka settled into the wide receiver two role. Then this year it was like, all right, this time for real, Emeka Egbuka, you're the guy. And Jeremiah Smith happened,
yeah,
and so it was like for me, it was like you guys keep teasing me with this Emeka Egbuka thing. I'm waiting for him to, show the wide receiver one that he's supposed to be. But I had to really like take a step back, self reflect, and because I play basketball. Tell people in basketball, be a star in your role. And if you can be a star in your role, you can play anywhere. Emeka Egbuka settled into a role at Ohio State for the last few years. He was a star in his role. What they asked him to do, he was doing. He wasn't. They weren't asking him to do much more. They weren't asking him to do much less. What they needed him to do, he was able to do. And so I think Emeka Egbuka, and this is why he's not in tier two because I don't think he has wide receiver one potential. But I think he'll be a top end wide receiver two in this league. And I think he showed that at Ohio State, and there's nothing wrong with that. And I had to really sit back and realize this was somebody on my team, I'd be pretty satisfied. Especially my team is picking late,
yeah,
and we had a need. We still do have a need a receiver. And so it's like if they drafted Emeka Egbuka at 29, I wouldn't have been upset because that's a legit number two option next to Terry McLaurin.
yeah,
Of course, now we got Debo, so I'm a little because you mentioned Emeka Egbuka, mostly a slot guy. 80%. That's probably an accurate number. Because he's a slot guy, and there's like we said, we don't discriminate against slots. We appreciate the slot, but at the same time, when it comes to drafting people, the Commanders aren't going to value Emeka Egbuka as high as another team like the Steelers. The Steelers, who would definitely need a slot guy to fit in their offense. The Commanders won't value him as high because they already have a Debo Samuel, but they probably want to do most of his work from the slot.
yeah,
So it's not about where his big board ranking may not actually reflect where he's drafted. But I do think he will be the best, not the best, one of the best wide receiver twos in the NFL for a long time. I don't really know who I would compare. They want to compare him to Olave, and Jackson Smith and Jigba. I think he got a little bit more juice than the Jigba, but I think he could settle into a similar role just with not as much upside because I think JSN has ascended into the
Yeah.
wide receiver one role. And I think Emeka could fit into that same role next to a wide receiver one. Have big games when he needs to. They can rely on him. Similar to a Devontae Smith type production. Not the same level of receiver because Devontae is a true outside guy who can also play in the slot. But the production that Devontae Smith, the reliability that he gives you as your wide receiver too. Some games he can be your first target, your first option. But for a 17 game stretch, he's probably your second guy that you're going to, and I think that's okay for a wide receiver four in this draft class. So that's why he's the top of my tier three.
Yeah, so I agree with everything there. I think so. The second guy in my tier, this may be where we part a little bit, but I felt like I needed to be consistent just given why I had Tet over Matthew Golden. So my wide receiver five and my second guy in the tier three is Jayden Higgins out of Iowa State, I believe, or is that the wrong? That may be the wrong
Yeah,
school.
Iowa State. Yeah,
Oh, it was Iowa State. Okay, but yeah, kind of similar to Tet. It's like 6'4", 215. He's got good speed. I think he ran like a 4.44 at the combine. I can't remember, but he
4.47.
4.47. Okay, so pretty similar to Tet. Probably not the probably not. From what I saw, he didn't do a whole lot of contested catching. Maybe I need to go back and watch again, but I like again inside outside versatility. He's a guy that can win on the outside, and is probably going to be on the outside for most of his career. But he's a guy that you can bring. He's a guy that you can bring in motion. He's a guy that you can use in the slot. He's a bigger body receiver, so he's a guy that you're definitely going to look for as a red zone target. Um, yeah, pretty good in the short game as well. He's a guy that you could throw like a quick in route and have pretty good yards after the catch. So not too dissimilar from what we said about Ted, but I just think that Ted had a little more consistency in production, and I think he's got a slightly different gear than I think Higgins has, and that's why him and Higgins are separated in my tiers list.
Yep. So for me, the final receiver, my third tier is Luther Burden. So he's my wide receiver five. Another slot guy. I think even less so than Emeka Egbuka. I'd want to see Luther Burden outside. I think he is, like you said, 80% for Egbuka. I'd say 90% for wherever Luther Burden goes that he needs to be in the slot. Just because I think Emeka, even if you put him on the outside, I think there are times where he can win on the outside just with his route running alone.
Mm-hmm.
Luther, I don't see the same because he's more of a, I don't want to use the word gadget because that has a negative connotation sometimes, but he's more of a chess piece. Versatile. Let's say versatile because
Yeah,
that sounds positive. He's a more versatile player where you move him around, you put him in motion, you give him the ball quick, give him a jet sweep, and that's where he'll give you the instant spark, the win for your offense right there. And I think he can win from the slot, especially if there's a mismatch in front of him. But he's not a super plus athlete where he's beating anybody down the sideline. So I think his ability he's a quick twitch athlete. So he'll be hard to bring down in the open field. So I think that's why jet sweeps, the quick hits work for him. He'll be a monster in the screen game. So I think in an offense that probably already has, similar to Ibuka's, already has a number one receiver. If you need that second option, or even if you're a team who needs a third option, because I would probably take him early round two. If you're a team that needs a third option, but you genuinely need that third option, like you said with the Steelers, like yeah, they got their two outside guys, but you'd probably want to get a third guy in there for whoever's throwing on the football. I think Luther Burden could be that three or two for whatever team drafts him. But they just have to be able to use him in the correct way. He's not a steamroller or route runner. He's not gonna beat you off the line of scrimmage and take the top off the defense consistently. But he'll win in the short game, intermediate game, even or across the middle. He'll take a hit. He'll make somebody miss. Um, so just know who you're drafting. But I think if his optimal situation, I think wide receiver five is fair, and you could see him even higher on this list down the line.
Yeah, so I agree with you. Just like you said, he's my final guy in tier 3. He's my wide receiver 6. I had him as a wide receiver 5 for a good minute, but again, just I like to I value. I feel like my big tiebreaker is valuing guys that I feel can win on the outside. So that's why I had Jayden over him. Also, like you said, I believe that Luther is going to be exclusively in the slot, so he'll probably play 90 to 100% of the snaps there. So that brought him down a little bit as well. Um, from what I saw on tape, it gave me to me it seemed like kind of like how the Packers used to use Randall Cobb a little bit. Use him out the backfield, jet sweeps, like you said, things of that nature. So I think that's something that he'll probably still be doing at the next level.
Yeah.
Like you said, he's a guy that if it's second and 3, third and 3, throw him a quick jet sweep, or even throw a quick drag route and see what he can do with the ball. So he's a guy that you definitely want to get the ball in his hands, but as you said, he's not a guy that you're asking to run a 10 yard out and expecting him to win that route. But maybe a shake route or an option route, maybe. But yeah, not just like. But you're not expecting him to beat you to just route everybody up, so to speak.
Yeah, and
So
I think Randall Cobb is a good comparison, just because Randall Cobb isn't a explosive athlete where he wasn't beating people down the field once again, but he was twitchy. He was their punt returner, kick returner for a decent amount of time in the Packers. I mean, with the Packers, he was a slot guy who was winning from the inside, and they were getting him the ball in the quick game, bubble screens, like you said, drag routes, and he put together a 10-year career doing that. And but Luther Burden was a quarterback who can trust him. I'm pretty sure he could do the same. So that's our uh that's tier 3. Is
yeah,
that you have another receiver in tier 3?
no, those are my 3 tiers,
Okay,
3 tier 3 receivers.
okay, because I had 2 tier 3 receivers, and so now I'm in tier 4
Okay,
for me. The first receiver in my tier 4 is gonna be is close between these three. And I don't know what it is, but I'm gonna go down with the ship with Ty Felton from Maryland. That 4-3 and the season he was having at the about 6 games in, he was on pace to be in the Blitnikoff conversation. So the production is there, the speed is there, the frame is there. I would like him to put on a little bit more weight. I think he's like 6'3", 180. But he puts on a little bit more weight. He's not a technician of a route runner. Hopefully he can learn to win with his size. Start leaning on cornerbacks a little, create that separation in that way. But of course, he would have to add a little bit more size in order to do that. But that 4-3 speed, I think, will show. I think the twitchiness, the sudden movements will come over time with a good wide receiver coach. And I don't think this is necessarily me falling for the traits, because the production is also there.
mm,
Um, and so for me, I feel like he provides some answers uh to the questions that I have for other receivers, like a Trey Harris from Ole Miss, who's also in tier 4 for me. Like a Jayden Higgins, Iowa State, because Jayden Higgins, who you had him what,
yeah,
wide receiver 5. I see the vision with him. Um, I just didn't see because he's a very similar frame to Ted McMillan, similar athleticism. I just didn't see the winning over the top that I would have liked to see from him in comparison to Ted, and so that just may not be something he has. But if he does, great. Then you're right. I'm wrong. But I would have my tier 4, and we can end off with tier 4 unless you have more. My tier 4 would be Ty Felton, Jaden Harris, not Jaden Harris,
Trey Harris.
Jaden Higgins,
Oh,
and
Jayden
Trey
Higgins, my
Harris.
fault.
Yeah. So that's tier 4 for me.
So you said Ty Felton, Jayden Higgins, and
Trey Harris.
okay. So like you in my tier 4, I have Trey Harris in there, and I also have who's my other guy? Give me 1 second. I wish I had looked at more tape on Tay, so that way I could have added him, but he would probably have been more like my sleeper category, just 'cause I didn't get to watch as much tape on him. Alec Alexander out of Stanford. That's the other guy in my tier 4.
Yeah, that's a good
Both of those guys I think are guys that you're going to play on the outside level. I think that Alec has a little bit enough of a twitch to where you can play him in the slot, but he's most likely going to be your Z receiver who you may bring in motion and is going to be on the outside for the most part. Trey, I think, is going to be exclusively outside. I didn't see enough wiggle for him to be a slot guy. So unless you're running, say, like slot fades or something like that, I don't think you're using him in the slot too much. But they're both guys that I think can win at the top of their routes. They're both guys that have pretty good yards have pretty good yard after the catchability. So I think they'll be able to produce at the next level. Another thing I liked about Trey is that he did play quarterback at one point before college. So I feel like he understands, kind of like with Travis is the receiver DB thing. He kind of understands what a quarterback is looking for. And I think that's why he worked so well with Jackson Dart last year as his number one guy. So those two are the guys in my tier 4. I think those are guys that you probably grab in the third round. That'll probably be developmental, but they have a chance to be probably your wide receiver 2 at best. If you really can get the most out of them, then maybe wide receiver 1, but they're probably going to be your wide receiver 2 at best. And they're guys that I think can just be solid outside receivers for a good 8 to 10 years if necessary.
I think you said it well. I think we can move on to the tight end group. It started with the I have 2 tight ends in my tier 1 of tight ends. And I think you know who my tight end 1 is. Colston Loveland of Michigan. My oh my. Tyler Warren is cool. I just feel like Colston Loveland got a little bit more juice to him.
Yeah.
And for me, I feel like Colston is a better route runner against man coverage. Then I feel like Tyler Warren is better against zone. I feel like he knows where to be in the zone. But his pure athleticism against man won't really show. And I feel like if either one had to learn the other trait, I feel like it would be easier for Colston Loveland to learn how to feel a zone than it would be for Tyler Warren to beat a more athletic defender in my eyes. I do think Tyler Warren gives you a bit of versatility in he's a better blocker, I believe, day one. He also had a couple handoffs at Penn State, a couple goal line carries, so he has that experience as well. So he may be a tight end, fullback, movable chess piece, giving you different options there. But I think as a pure receiver, and that's truly what I value when it comes to tight ends, especially first round tight ends. The pure receiver, I have Colston over him. The hands, the route running. He has a lot of room to grow as a blocker, though. So I will say that Colston has a lot of room to grow as a blocker. But again, let me see the height, because he's a big boy, like 6'6". Yeah, he's 6'6". So it's pretty difficult for him to get all the way down there. Pause. But he, but the blocking, he's gonna have to work on it and improve once he gets to the league, because Tyler Warren does have him beat there. But I think that pure receiving, I'll take Colston almost any day of the week.
So yeah,
What you
this was a very tough evaluation in terms of rankings because we both have Colston and Tyler in our tier 1. After watching a whole lot of tape, I was very, very, very what's the word? Convicted to make Colston my tight end 1. Because I feel like, and I understood why when we did the mock draft you had Colston going to the Colts, because I feel because of his ability to be split out wide, and kind of like we said about Brock Bowers last season. So he's a guy that if you want Anthony Richardson, you would probably prefer to have Colston over Tyler, because you already have guys like Mo Alley Cox and other tight ends that can be those blocking tight ends if you need them to be. So at that point, you could just use Colston as a weapon, whether it's in line, outside the numbers, and other things of that nature, especially in the red zone. So between him and AD Mitchell, that would be interesting to see how they would be used in the red zone and things of that nature. But I went with Tyler Warren partially because of the blocking thing, because I do think that's an important thing, but also I think he has slightly more versatility than Colston. Not crazy, not a whole lot more, but because I don't think he's a guy that you're lining up out wide. So like receiving wise, I think that he has a ceiling on where he can be lined up. But as you said, he could be an H back. He could be your wildcat guy if you want to have somebody do carries down at the red zone. He can throw a little bit. I mean, I don't think you're having him throw more than 5 yards, but if you want him to throw the ball, he can. I really would like to see him get drafted. I don't know if he'll still be sitting there, but I would like to see him get drafted by, say, San Francisco, because I feel like
Mm.
that's a team that I feel like he would be a guy that Kyle Shanahan would really like to use. And I think that with Kittle getting a little bit, I know they'll probably look more offensive tackle because Trent Williams is getting up there in age, but I think that this is a situation where with George Kittle getting a little bit older, I feel like he'd be the perfect guy to kind of get the torch passed to, so to speak, and kind of learn from Kittle a little bit. So if he's sitting there at 11, I would like to see San Fran take him if they don't go offensive tackle. But yeah, it was very close between him and Loveland because they're both guys that I think are going to go top 10, top 15. Like I think they'll probably be like you said earlier about some of the receivers. I think both of them may be in my top 15 on my
Mm.
big board once I lay everything out.
And I think it's really all about what a team wants
Yeah,
and what they need from their tight end and their scheme. Because if you got a downhill run system, you probably want Tyler Warren a little bit more than you want Colston Loveland, just because he is a day one better blocker. Not to say Tyler Warren's a great blocker, but in comparison to Colston, he's much better.
yeah,
But if you want your tight end to run the tight end route from the tight end position, but also move him to the slot, potentially move him to the outside as well, I would take Colston. So just for me, that's just what I value more. And you just value the different type of because they're both versatile.
yeah.
It's just different type of versatility. I think Tyler is versatile in the pass and the run. And I think Colston is probably the most versatile in the passing game. Um, and it's close. I just value the passing stuff more. And so they're both tier one tight end prospects. That is what it is. Who's your third guy?
So my third guy in the tier two is Harold Fannin Jr. out of Bowling Green. I think
Mm.
he's kind of similar to Tyler in that he's used in different ways. I think they had him passing a couple of times, like as trick plays, but it wasn't anything too crazy. But he's a guy that I think he's probably honestly, I think he'd be this. You would argue he's the second best out of the three tight ends in terms of route running because I think he had a little more extensive of a route tree than Tyler Warren did. Um, but he's a guy that I think you pick. He's a day two pick that can be your tight end too. That you're looking forward to be a receiver. I didn't get to see too much of his blocking, so I can't. There's only so much I can say about how he operates as a blocker, but he's a guy that you can put in the slot. Well, not in the slot, but like out wide enough, like a little bit inside, still inside the numbers, but not crazy. But he's a guy that can run routes. He's a guy that you can give the ball to on a jet sweep, and he can get you a couple of yards. Kind of like an Evan Ingram, but not exactly like Evan Ingram because I think Evan's got a little bit more of an athletic ceiling. Um, so yeah, I think he's a guy that's going to go day two, but he's a guy that will probably be that'll be a solid tight end for a good amount of years. So um, I think he will be a little scheme dependent. I think it will depend on what team takes him. But I think that he has a chance to thrive year one if he's picked by the right team.
Um, my three would be Mason Taylor out of LSU. I think Fannin probably has a lot of prospects beat in terms of production. Just based off this last season, probably one of the best tight end seasons in college football of all time. I don't love his movement skills, especially as a brother. I was a bit disappointed in seeing how stiff of a mover he was. But I like Mason Taylor's fluidity a little bit more than I do out of Harold Fannin. And Harold Fannin, for his size, is also not a great blocker. Only at 230. So I think he does have a little bit of room, especially since he's only 230. There's some athleticism in there that could potentially be untapped. Um, so I think he's a pretty decent route runner. Um, just don't like his the agility before the catch or after the catch. I think he's pretty good at the catch point. Blocking leaves a little bit to be desired. And his size, it's not much he can really do in the blocking game, even if he wanted to. But for Mason Taylor, bit more size, a bit more, I won't say athleticism, but a bit more speed to his game. So you may see him in different sets, different alignments where he may not just strictly be a inline tight end. You may see him in the slot, depending on what team he's in. So I got Mason Taylor at my number 3. I didn't know he was Jason Taylor's son.
I did not either until you just said that.
No
Oh
idea.
yeah, because I just saw the KTO thumbnail. Yeah, that's all I saw.
Yeah. So
Yeah, that athleticism's got to count for something.
hey, the bloodline traits, I guess. Let me see. That's we can go to sleep. You got any tight end sleepers?
Um.
I could list out a couple.
Okay.
I like, or I liked previously. This is another preseason guy, Oronde Gadsden.
Oh, out
Out
of
of Syr-
Syracuse, yeah.
yeah. He's a little light though. And then let me scroll. Next name, Luke Lachey. It's hard to go wrong with an Iowa tight end, and he's probably a good blocker day one. Not much of an athlete though, but has good size for the position. I think he'll stick in the league as a potential tight end 2 somewhere. Those are the 2 sleepers I got for you. I can't guarantee nothing else with any of the rest of these tight ends.
Yeah, I think the only
Not much on them.
Say that again, my fault.
So it's just not much on the rest of them. I think Gunnar Helm out of Texas. I think he has some decent film and decent production, but just not much familiarity with him.
Yeah, the only other guy I would say
4.840. Ooh.
That's what Gunnar ran.
Yes.
Dang. It's definitely gonna be an inline tight end. The only guy I have out is Elijah Arroyo. I haven't seen a whole lot of his tape.
Oh, I forgot about him. Yes.
Yeah, I haven't seen a whole lot of his tape. So if you have anything on him, that works. But yeah, that's the only other guy I can think of on the list.
Decent size, decent athleticism, and decent production. I think he'll probably go 3rd round, depending on how the first 2 tight ends go off the board. Because Tyler and Colston could go early, but they're tight ends, so they could also fall into the 20s at some point.
Yeah.
So if they fall a little bit, the 3rd tight end could fall, the 4th tight end could fall. But I think Arroyo, he's probably like the 5th or 6th tight end. He could go early 3rd, mid 3rd, depending on what team needs. He's a decent athlete though. Not the greatest route runner, but he's a decent blocker and he has good size. So I think he'll find a way to stick in the league.
For sure.
But that's all I had on wide receiver, tight end. You got anything you want to add before we wrap up?
No, I think we touched on all the receivers and all the tight ends we wanted to talk about. So
Right. I think this was another successful episode of Trace Triumph, if you agree. So we'll wrap up here. Be sure to check out all of the videos in the Trace Triumph catalog, even from last year if you want to hear us talk about Jayden Daniels and how wrong we were. But familiarize yourself with us, familiarize yourselves with our content. We will have this episode dropping soon. Of course, you're watching it. And then we'll have another one following up. And then NFL Draft is coming up. So we got another mock draft that we're going to end up doing. Before we sign out, shout out to SportsFan once again. And we appreciate you all watching. Be sure to like, share, and subscribe. And stay tuned for the next play.